Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and with a new season of Diablo 4 having just launched, we must once again ask the age-old question, D4 bad? Well, let's find out. In this video, we'll cover Diablo 4's new season, but we'll also talk about rumors of the game hitting Nintendo Switch 2, as well as BioWare's rocky future, and a rebuttal from Microsoft about a damning report. Now, if you're diving into Diablo 4 Season 7, I have an ultimate guide to the season with the fastest leveling tips and explanations on the new season mechanic. I also have a tier list on the best classes for the season, as well as a beginner guide to Vessel of Hatred if you're new to the game or new to the expansion. You can find all these video guides on my website, Rhykker.com, which brings us to a word from this video's sponsor. I built my website using Squarespace, and I was able to do everything myself quickly and easily and with zero education in the field, all thanks to how easy Squarespace is to work with. Squarespace even has a new AI tool called Design Intelligence, which combines 2 decades of industry-leading web design expertise with the latest AI tech to empower you to build a beautiful-looking, personalized website made exactly for your needs and your unique identity. Squarespace even has optimized SEO tools so that you can launch your website and start getting views as quickly as possible. Squarespace is flexible for any kind of website with tons of design options to pick from. You can easily connect all your social accounts and also upload your video content and organize your video library. You can sell products or services, and with Squarespace Payment, you have an easy way to manage your payments in one place. You're just a few clicks away from being able to receive payments through your website, all while offering customers popular payment methods like Apple Pay, ClearPay, Klarna, and ACH Direct Debit. Basically, if you want to build a website, I recommend Squarespace. So head to squarespace.com/Rhykker or click the link in the description to start your free trial and use code Rhykker to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/RHYKKER and use code Rhykker. Alright, starting off with Diablo news. Diablo 4 is free to play until January 28th, which I believe includes the Spiritborn class and Vessel of Hatred content, and the game itself was discounted during this time as well. Now, Season 7, Season of Witchcraft, launched on Tuesday, and early reports from players seem to be positive. In fact, I think this is the smoothest season launch yet. No major complaints seem to have emerged from the community. Keyword again, yet. Now, that said, just anecdotally, I feel like this season isn't very popular. I barely see people in-game. I feel like Twitch and YouTube numbers aren't doing great. But if you look at the Steam numbers, they seem comparable to Seasons 4 and 5. Now, obviously, they're nowhere close to Season 6. Season 6 numbers were really good, but that was the launch of an expansion, so obviously you're guaranteed to have much more players. And as a reminder, folks, the Steam population is like the tiniest fraction of a percentage of Diablo 4's player base, which on PC is mostly on Battle.net, and then you also have PlayStation and Xbox. So always take the Steam numbers with a grain of salt. Now, myself personally, after I tried the PTR in December, I wasn't terribly excited for Season 7. But I found myself having a good time so far, and I believe if you look at the season objectively, this is the best season of Diablo 4. If someone were to start playing D4 this season, this is the best state the game has ever been in. I previously thought Vessel of Hatred was its best state. Season 6 had a weak theme, and class balance was terrible because of the broken Spiritborn. But now, Season 7 is basically, we took that state, we now have a solid season theme, probably the best season theme, and balance is now good. Probably the best balance has ever been in the game. So overall, season seeming like a win. There's 3 things for myself personally that take away from enjoying the season as much as I possibly could. The first is Season 7 just kind of feels like a best of the past 6 seasons, which it's great that they've taken everything that worked before and basically smushed it all together and perfected it this season, right? The witch powers are an improved take on blood powers with a better upgrade path. They're now shared amongst all characters, which is also something that is much appreciated relative to the blood powers. They're more interesting, they're more visual. Then the occult gems are malignant hearts turned into a long tail progression system with more depth to them. The headhunt zones are probably the best seasonal zone takeover events yet, with tons of density and loot and different events to do in them. Then the root holds take aspects of Infernal Horde mini dungeons and other past mini dungeons, but again, it juices them up builds them into something more, gives us more interesting choices to make, more density as well. So for someone experiencing all of this for the first time, it is awesome. For those of us who have played all 6 seasons, while again, it does feel like this is all executed very well, it just doesn't feel novel. So that was number 1. Number 2 is progression is too fast for my tastes. I'm someone who can spend a lot of time playing, more than the average person, I understand, and I want to continue to play for a long time, and now we're hitting level 60 in 3 hours, and blasting through the torments, and loot is raining from the sky constantly, to the point that you rapidly need to start ignoring loot drops, because you can't pick it all up. And again, I'll stress this is a me thing. I'm not saying how the game ought to be, I'm just saying this negatively impacts my personal enjoyment, but I can bet you that this season will be very popular with a lot of players who are going to love how fast progression is and how so many items are dropping. Personally, I thought Season 6's pace of progression and loot drops was better. And then the third thing, again, that takes away from the season for me is we still have no endgame meta progression system to keep me engaged beyond a desire to just get stronger for the sake of getting stronger. I just blast a character until I'm satisfied with its gear and paragon, and then I'm done. I don't want to be done, I want to keep playing, but there's nothing to keep me going past a certain point. There's no purpose, and now that progression is so much faster, I'm going to get to that point faster. Now, thankfully, because class balance is so good in Season 7, I'm planning to make multiple builds on multiple characters, so hopefully that is what's going to keep me playing longer. But ultimately, I think this is a key thing that Diablo 4 is still missing for it to be the best game that it can possibly be. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot. Season 7 is actually terrible, and I hate it because of this. Alright, I am right-clicking, and I'm hitting play. And when shit stops dropping, I'm gonna stop this timer. Still going, still going, still going. 12 seconds, still going, still going, still going. Is this a joke? Is this an out of season April Fool's joke? We're on 23 seconds. Shit is still pooping out of this goddamn sack. 30 seconds, guys.
Efficient.
Okay, I think that was it. 33 seconds. 33 seconds for loot to drop out of this. What is going on? No, but seriously, as a reiteration, I think this is overall the best season of Diablo 4 yet, and I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy it. It is good that the devs take what worked in the past, iterate on it, and bring it back into the game in an even better format. And I wonder if the success of Headhunts will see changes made to Whispers, and I wonder if Root Holds are a test for changes to make Nightmare Dungeons more interesting. Now, I do want to revisit the loot filter discussion. I've held for years that a loot filter is a band-aid solution to a problem, and I would rather solve the problem at its source rather than just put a band-aid on it. Well, at this point in the life of Diablo 4, I'll say it, just give me the band-aid. I'm bleeding here. We need a loot filter. Too much stuff drops. We're leaving stuff on the ground. It's getting yeeted into my stash. I don't want it. I'm leaving it on the ground on purpose. And once you start leaving stuff on the ground, that means you need to filter it. It's not even about the white and blue and yellow items anymore. Yeah, I mean, obviously we still don't want those, but it's legendaries that we're leaving behind now. Also, poor console players are not even able to target what loot they pick up, so they are forced to pick up all the trash around them at random until they get the item that they want. These guys aren't just bleeding, they're hemorrhaging. This is not a good gameplay experience. Then, just a little bit of a nitpick, Barrier has felt weird to deal with since Season 6, and in Season 7 we have a ton of more enemies with Barrier on them. I'm not opposed to more challenging content, but especially at lower levels, facing enemies with Barrier just seems like a strange spike in how bullet spongy enemies are. It almost feels like damage is not being properly calculated against barriers. I don't know. Now, one question I get asked a lot is it worth coming back for Season 7? Well, if you own Diablo 4 and you haven't played Season 6, which came with a huge overhaul patch, then yeah, it's worth giving it another try because it costs you nothing extra, and maybe you'll find that you like the game. So if you spent money in the game and you thought you didn't like it, well, you're going to recoup your money by now enjoying the experience. If you try Season 7 and you still don't like Diablo 4, then you can probably assume you'll never like Diablo 4 at this point. Similarly, if you tried Season 6 and did not like it, then you are unlikely to like Season 7. And you don't need to buy Vessel of Hatred to play Season 7, by the way. Now, obviously, the big topic is Path of Exile 2 versus Diablo 4. Look, both games are targeting different audiences at this point, as I've explained before in multiple videos, and Season 7 really feels like the culmination of this. Diablo 4 is the ultimate power fantasy for maximum blasting enjoyment for people without much time to play, who want to chill and kill hordes of monsters and see loot rain from the sky. D4 is really leaning into being the ARPG for more casual players, as I've been saying, and I'll reiterate that is not a criticism, and I don't mean to... when I say casual players, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I myself am in many ways a casual player. Casual can mean different things to different people, but if that label has negative associations with it, let's stop calling it casual. Here's what it comes down to. Some people want chocolate cake, some people want apple pie. It's good now that we have both of these things with D4 and PoE 2, because some people don't like apple pie and some people don't like chocolate cake. But some of us can enjoy both. And in my case, I can enjoy both a chocolate cake and an apple pie for what they are. Sometimes I want one, sometimes I want the other. Oh, and a little tip for those playing Season 7. You can choose which currencies are visible in your inventory screen. Just go to your Material tab and select it. You'll probably want to see how much Restless Rot you have. Then, in other Diablo 4 news, there's a rumor that the game is coming to the Nintendo Switch 2, which is releasing this year. This rumor comes from YouTuber Xtasis, who correctly leaked Diablo 1 coming to Game Pass just a few weeks ago. So, I'm inclined to believe this one. He even thinks the Switch 2 release for D4 could happen in 2025 as well, which may make it a launch title. He also suggested that Fallout 4, Starfield, Tekken 8, Elden Ring, and the next Call of Duty game will all come to Switch 2. And it makes perfect sense. Diablo 3 released on the Switch in 2018. Diablo 4 already runs on the Steam Deck, so why not Switch 2? Then lastly, the new Diablo 4 season has caused a delay in the scheduled Diablo 3 Season 34 start, which was supposed to happen last night, but is instead now launching next Friday, January 31st. PezRadar took to the forums to say that this was due to player feedback requesting that the two seasons start not overlap, as well as to ensure account states migrate over properly. This unfortunately means that the Darkening of Tristram event will be over by the time the season starts. It's always nice when a season start happens during the Darkening of Tristram, during January, because it offers a fun alternative leveling path. Too bad. Now, if you plan to play Season 34 of Diablo 3 and you want to grab the cosmetic rewards, the conquests you'll have to do this season are... you don't really have a great selection, to be honest. The three you'll want to do are... well, first and foremost, the level 6 gems to rank 65. This one is really easy and you don't really have to go out of your way to do. You're going to be doing tons of Greater Rifts anyway. Then the Boss Rush Conquest. It's a little trickier. It's the one where you got to kill all bosses in 20 minutes. Just follow a speed build guide on max roll. Do it on Torment 10. This one takes some work, but the later in the season that you do it, the easier it'll be because the stronger you'll be. Then the last conquest to do, I personally like to do Sprinter when it comes up. That's completing the entire campaign in 1 hour, but it does take practice. It takes a lot of setup. You might have to try a few times. I have old guides on how to do it, and I find it fun to do occasionally, but again, it's not the easiest. The easier but more tedious conquest to do would be to complete a GR55 with 6 different class sets. Every class set can easily do a GR55, but you have to go and farm them all up, which is the tedious part, and you gotta do it on at least 2 different characters to have enough class sets. Alright, moving on to some Path of Exile 2 news. I haven't had a chance to play this week because of the launch of the D4 season, but I hear that last week's patch has been very well received. The ability to replace runes in gear is probably the highlight. It's especially helpful to solo self-found players like me, so I'm sure I'm going to love it. I also really look forward to the charm indicators and getting to feel like my charm is actually doing stuff. I've seen reports of performance improvements. Navigating the Atlas is better now thanks to the more zoomed out view, as well as the better signaling of where to find citadels. And of course, the loot filter for console players Welcome to the club, folks. You'll never go back to no filter. Remember, visit filterblade.xyz to download the never sync loot filters. And Theory Crafters, Path of Building. This is an invaluable tool for optimizing your character. You're going to input your character build, and you're basically going to run a sim. So let's say you want to make some changes. See if you can squeeze out a bit more performance, a bit more damage maybe, from your passive tree without having to go and spend the cost of respecking your passive tree in-game. Or maybe if you engage in trade, you're wondering, this item that I'm about to buy, is it actually an upgrade? Just slap the item into Path of Building and see what your new numbers look like. Then in some EA news, journalist Jason Schreier reported that EA warned shareholders that its financial results for the fiscal year will be weaker than expected because two of its big recent titles, EA Sports FC 25 and Dragon Age the Veilguard, did not meet sales expectations. Now, the Veilguard in particular missed expectations by nearly 50%, apparently reaching around 1.5 million players. However, EA puts most of the blame of their lowered financial results on EA Sports FC 2025, which is a soccer game in a line of games that typically print money for EA hand over fist. Now, as a result, the share price of EA has dropped 18%, which is the biggest drop its stock experienced since 2008. EA's stock had reached its all-time peak in November, and it's down 30% since then. EA CEO Andrew Wilson said, quote, "We remain confident in our long-term strategy and expect a return to growth in fiscal year 26 as we execute against our pipeline." Now, the part that interests me the most is not the soccer game, but the Dragon Age numbers. Specifically, we look at their choice of wording, that it reached 1.5 million players. They didn't say it sold 1.5 million copies. And generally, at these press release kind of things, they're gonna play with words to present things in the most positive light possible. So I think they sold fewer than 1.5 million copies. I think they were including players who tried out the 5-hour-long free trial of the game. So this would be even more devastating in that case. Development on Veilguard began in 2015. So 9 years of dev time to barely sell 1.5 million units in its first few months? That hurts. A game like this can cost over $200 million to make. At this point, they might not even have made a profit. I'm kind of worried about BioWare at this point. Their last really good game was Dragon Age Inquisition, and that was in 2014. Since then, they released Mass Effect Andromeda in 2017, which got mediocre reviews and was largely considered not as good as the original Mass Effect trilogy. We got Anthem in 2019, which was a total disaster, poor reviews, failing to meet sales expectations, and now Veilguard, that's 3 misses in a row. Or, to put it more harshly, they haven't released a hit in over a decade. EA has not been shy historically to shut down studios. They've shut down plenty of studios for less. Even BioWare's Montreal branch was shut down right after releasing Mass Effect Andromeda, even though they'd been a support studio for years before that, and this was their first standalone release. If BioWare doesn't get shut down by EA before then I think the next Mass Effect game that is currently in production, which I do have high hopes for, that might be BioWare's last chance. The director of Dragon Age the Veilguard left BioWare last week, and she was an 18-year veteran of EA. Does she sense a sinking ship? And if expectations were missed by 50%, that means they were expecting to have reached 3 million players, which itself seems pretty conservative given the last installment, Dragon Age Inquisition, sold over 12 million copies. For once, investors were not promised the moon, and their expectations were not too high. Now, what went wrong with the Veilguard? Well, a poor first impression with its marketing set a bad tone from the start, with a change in visual style that was not well received by many fans. Then the game itself suffered from bad writing, in a series known for its good writing. Stilted, awkward, dull dialogue that could not be saved by talented voice actors. The previous 3 Dragon Age games are actually incredibly different in gameplay. They're almost completely different games. So what is the throughput in Dragon Age? What makes a Dragon Age game a Dragon Age game? And it's the universe that ties them together. It's the characters. It's the themes that the stories tackle. And the adeptness with which they tackle those social and religious and political issues. It takes incredibly talented writers with a subtle hand to write these kind of stories and not come off as preachy or cringy. And from what I hear, because I haven't played it myself, it just sounds like the Veilguard dropped the ball here. But I turn the question to you folks. Why do you think the Veilguard is not performing well? Sound off in the comments. Then, in a follow-up to last week's story about a report from The Information that stated that Activision Blizzard has not helped Microsoft meet its Game Pass subscription growth metrics, well, in a statement to Insider Gaming, Microsoft basically refuted all The Information's claims. A Microsoft rep basically said that The Information took information out of context, and that Activision Blizzard actually accounts for 85% of quarterly revenue growth for Microsoft's gaming division since Q2 2024. In fact, the release of Call of Duty Black Ops 6 on October 25th saw a record number of new Game Pass subscriptions. Microsoft also flat out denied that the company considered exiting the gaming industry in 2021. Now, in retrospect, it does seem as though exiting the gaming industry is unlikely for Microsoft to do, so I'm wondering if this was actually a misunderstanding that Microsoft is choosing not to clarify and can therefore just outright deny the claim. Because my suspicion is that Microsoft was considering dropping out of the gaming hardware industry, as in no longer producing Xbox consoles, but sticking to games. It's no secret that they've been losing the console war for some generations now. And it fits the narrative that if they wanted to stay in the console business, they needed to make some major acquisitions to either produce exclusives or at least stop Sony from producing exclusives and just dominating all the exclusives. Then in some quick Balatro news, the game has reached 5 million units sold. As of August 7th, it had 2 million copies sold. It was at 3.5 million on December 11th, the day before the Game Awards. And now it's picked up another 1.5 million copies ever since it won Best Indie Game at the Game Awards. At this point, I am sold. You've all convinced me. I do want to try Balatro, but my question is, and I was about to buy it, but my question is, do I get it on my phone or do I get it on Steam? Because I don't think I can crossplay. So is it the kind of game that I can just idly play a bit here and there throughout the day on my phone, or is it something I want to get into a serious gaming session for on my PC? Help me out, folks. In other news, we got a bunch of reveals at Xbox Developer Direct this week. I will cover some highlights. We got the announcement trailer for Ninja Gaiden 4, featuring a new Master Ninja protagonist, who seems like the spiritual successor to Revengeance, with the game altogether seeming like a sequel to Metal Gear Rising. It'll release in fall 2025, coming to Game Pass on day one, and eventually coming to PS5. They also revealed the Ninja Gaiden 2 Black launch trailer, a remaster of Ninja Gaiden 2 on Unreal Engine 5, and it released on the same day, now available on Game Pass. It's been like a decade since anything happened in the Ninja Gaiden franchise. Now we just got the stealth drop of a remaster, an announcement of a new game coming this year, and there was also Ninja Gaiden Ragebound that was announced a month ago, coming summer 2025. It's a great time to be a Ninja Gaiden fan. Then we got an update on Doom: The Dark Ages, which is releasing May 15th. It sounds like the gameplay is changing up significantly from the breakneck speed of Doom Eternal. They said in Eternal you were a jet, in the Dark Ages you're a tank. We've had 3 modern Doom games now, and it's sounding like they're all going to have different gameplay. They describe the structure of the Dark Ages as more open, where you choose missions to do and what enemies to fight to some degree. Not quite open world, but they did use the term sandbox. There's 3 different melee weapons with a deep melee system. You're going to use your shield to block, parry, charge, even throw it at enemies. You'll even use it for traversals. Narratively, The Dark Ages is a prequel to Doom 2016, and the story will be told through cutscenes. There will be no multiplayer, but it'll have the most expansive, most epic campaign ever. They said, quote, "Our campaigns are, to a great extent, what people come to modern Doom games to play." No big loss with multiplayer. Doom multiplayer has been pretty hit and miss. Then we got the release date trailer for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. It'll release April 24th. Turn-based combat with real-time mechanics. It's a unique fantasy world with some top-tier voice talent, a 30-plus hour main game, not counting side content, and a roughly $45 price tag. Then lastly, we got a teaser for the upcoming No Rest for the Wicked patch. A Wicked Inside showcase will take place on March 11th, during which they'll unveil The Breach, the giant content update we've been waiting so long for. Because that's going to wrap up this week's video, but do be sure to check out last week's video, in which we discuss why Ubisoft may be on the brink of collapse. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more gaming content.